You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/MissionLog today to get 10% off your first month with a licensed therapist. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/MissionLog.
This episode is also sponsored by Factor Meals. Head to factormeals.com/missionlog50, that's the number 50, and use code missionlog50 to get 50% off. That's code missionlog50 at factormeals.com/missionlog50 to get 50% off.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 514, Message in a Bottle.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we take a look at each and every episode of Star Trek to see if they withstand the test of time and if they have any morals, meanings, or messages contained therein. And we are going to try something new for this episode. Computer, activate emergency podcast host program.
Please state the nature of the podcast emergency.
There's no emergency. I just wanted to see if this new Mark II podcast host program was working.
Oh, I see. Summoning me at a whim, are you? You know, this podcasting equipment is expensive, and I can't just be expected to drop in at your beck and call. I suppose I'm expected to fill your ears with cleverly selected trivia and then segue into my astute yet comedic observations.
Computer, end podcast host program. The real John will return with trivia in a moment, right after I tell you how to reach us. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook at Mission Log Pod. While you're at it, leave us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember your comments could be used on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. And now, here's the real John Champion with this week's trivia.
Oh, thank goodness we got rid of that jerk. All right, message in a bottle. We have a story by Rick Williams, and I'm afraid the trail dries up after that bit of trivia because, as far as we know, this is Rick's only professional credit as a writer. But if he successfully pitched the story, it was up to Lisa Klink to shape it into a teleplay, and that's who gets the credit here. And Lisa's name is the only one with the credit, though there were contributions from the rest of the team, not the least of whom was Bob Picardo, who claims that he is the one who shaped some of the jokes in this outing, specifically the bit where one EMH says to the other, "Stop breathing down my neck." Yes, that was his. This was directed by Nancy Malone. Hey, do you remember way back in season 3 when we covered the episode Coda, the one where Janeway dies and her father tries to take her to the afterlife? Well, not really. She wasn't really dead and he was just an alien. Well, that one was also directed by Nancy Malone. And she is part of a very small group of women who sat in the Star Trek director's chair up to this point. This is her second and final directorial gig for the franchise, but hopefully you remember that she had a very full resume directing multiple episodes of Melrose Place, Dynasty, Hotel, and many other shows during the 80s through the early 2000s. And that's not even to get into her longer resume as an actor, starting out in the early 1950s and appearing as a regular on Naked City and The Long Hot Summer and a multitude of guest spots along the way. Nancy passed away in 2004. Let's meet our guest stars. We get a short couple of glimpses of someone on the other end of the communications relay who introduces himself as a Hirogen. He's played by Tiny Ron, and I do love an ironic nickname. We've seen Tiny Ron many times before in all his 7-foot-tall glory, many times on DS9 as Mehardu, and he'll be back with us again in his Hirogen guise. Definitely listed in the credits here is Judson Scott as the Romulan commander Ricard. You may recall that Judson did not get a credit for his rather prominent role as Joachim in The Wrath of Khan. But he did also get a credit for his other Star Trek outing in TNG's first season episode Symbiosis. Most of us remember the shows like V and The Phoenix filled out his other sci-fi cred, along with guest appearances on Babylon 5, The X-Files, and more. Judson's on-screen credits stop in the early 2000s, and so far, this is the last of his Star Trek appearances. Another Romulan we get to know is Nevala, played by Valerie Wildman. While this is the only appearance on Star Trek so far for Valerie, she has been in front of the camera practically non-stop since she debuted in the 1983 film Splash. She's got a lot of feature film credits to her name, like My Blue Heaven, Mars Attacks, and Internal Affairs. On TV, she has guest starred all over the place and racked up impressive recurring roles on shows like Beverly Hills 90210, Dangerous Women, and more than 100 appearances on Days of Our Lives. Finally, the EMH Mark II is played here by stand-up and comedic actor Andy Dick. Andy is well known as a comedic actor, starting on TV in The Ben Stiller Show and gaining more widespread notoriety on news radio. He had his own show for a couple of seasons, The Andy Dick Show, and he continued to guest star and make feature film appearances through the 90s and 2000s. He's also a notorious guest on Comedy Central's Roasts. Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that Andy has had a number of run-ins with legal issues and accusations of inappropriate behavior personally and professionally. Kind of goes with the territory, and you can read much more about that on his Wikipedia page. More recently, Andy shows up in TV shows, short films, and as a voice actor, often playing himself or a version of himself. While he admitted that he wasn't a deeply knowledgeable Star Trek fan at the time of this show, he had expressed interest in the challenge of acting on a series like Star Trek to none other than Brannon Braga, who helped usher along his appearance.
Communicating with the Alpha Quadrant? That's good news. The bad news? The first hail you get is from someone who's been trying to reach you about your starship's extended warranty.
Prologue. Chakotay and B'Elanna are having a walking conversation down a corridor. Well, more like a deluge of B'Elanna's diatribe regarding her disdain towards Seven of Nine. B'Elanna cares not for Seven's arrogant and dismissive attitude, but Chakotay has had enough, and sternly suggests to B'Elanna to act like the senior officer she is. Suddenly, Seven of Nine overcomes, orders Chakotay to report to the astrometrics lab, Point Torres. Along the way, Chakotay runs into the captain, who has also been ordered by Seven to astrometrics. Game, set, and match. Torres. However, when Janeway and Chakotay ask Seven why they have been summoned, she informs them that she has detected a ship that might be of interest to them. And to their bewilderment, Janeway and Chakotay stare at a ship on the astrometrics monitor. A Starfleet ship. In the Alpha Quadrant. Act 1. Seven explains that she has been experimenting with increasing the range of the astrometric sensors using a nearby cluster of abandoned but functioning alien relay stations. The unidentified Starfleet ship is located at the furthest point of the furthest relay station's Wi-Fi range extender near the outermost edges of the Alpha Quadrant. Chakotay wonders if they can use the relay station to send a message to Starfleet, and Seven confirms it's doable, provided they transmit the message in the next 41 minutes before the ship leaves sensor range. Janeway orders her command staff to make it so. After fine-tuning their interlink frequencies to produce the correct carrier wave for the relay station, the captain attempts to send her first message. However, it is reflected back at Voyager because the signal strength is too weak and degrades rapidly as it travels through the network. Tom suggests using a stronger signal, to which B'Elanna thinks that a holographic data stream could work. Holographic data, as in the Doctor. B'Elanna rushes to sickbay, deactivates the Doctor mid-experiment, grabs his mobile emitter, and reactivates him in astrometrics. Janeway explains the situation to the Doctor, who proclaims he is more than up to the task of being turned into a data stream and transmitted through an abandoned relay station across thousands of light years only to be reconstituted on an unknown Starfleet vessel. When he rematerializes in what appears to be a Starfleet sickbay, the Doctor is informed by the ship's computer that he is on board the Federation starship Prometheus. However, something is amiss. After getting his bearings and scanning his surroundings, the Doctor discovers scorch marks on the walls and several crewmen lying on the floor covered in plasma burns. The Doctor manages to revive an ensign who is barely alive, and with his dying breath utters that Romulans have taken over the ship. Act 2. The computer informs the Doctor that 27 Romulans are on board and there are no surviving Starfleet crew members. Attempting to access further tactical information exceeds his security clearance, but he gains access to the general information about the Prometheus. It is an experimental prototype designed for long-range tactical missions, armed with state-of-the-art weaponry, ablative armor plating, regenerative shields, and something called multi-vector attack mode. The rest is classified, Starfleet's way of saying, you don't have clearance. On the bridge, confirming the dying ensign's words, Prometheus has been taken over by Romulans. The Romulan First Officer, Navala, informs her commander, Ricard, that they are being pursued by another Federation starship. Ricard orders the engagement of the untested multi-vector attack mode, much to Navala's chagrin. The ship's lighting turns blue, counts down from 10 to 1 for auto-separation, and it separates into 3 vehicles, surrounding the pursuing Federation ship and destroying it. Despite Ricard deeming it a successful test, Navala tends to an injured crewman and takes him to sickbay, where she finds the Doctor. He explains that he was immediately activated when she arrived, and insists that she can either deactivate him or help save her comrade's life, a duty he is sworn to, even for a Romulan. Realizing he needs assistance to treat his patient and gain access to the ship's information, he activates this ship's EMH, who appears not only younger, but far less follically challenged. Act 3. The Doctor's first encounter with this ship's EMH, who identifies himself as Mark II, is a bit tenuous at first. Mark II assumes that the Doctor is an intruder and almost alerts the entire ship, not knowing that the Prometheus has been taken over by Romulans. The Doctor quickly gets Mark II up to speed on why he's here and what has transpired with him and Voyager in the past 4 years when they were lost in the Delta Quadrant. In kind, Mark II confirms that the Romulans are not at war with the Federation, nor involved in the Dominion War, which, to the Doctor, is a long story. Needless to say, the Doctor and Mark II, amidst their petty squabbling as to which program is superior, put their differences aside to treat their patient and come up with a plan to neutralize the Romulans and retake Prometheus. Back in the Delta Quadrant, Voyager, specifically her crew, anxiously await the Doctor's return. Both Janeway and Chakotay admit to holding on to hope all these years in the form of letters that they have been updating in case the Doctor's mission is a success. Tom, however, cannot wait until the Doctor is back because he is at his wit's end, being the de facto medical officer, being the only other trained medic on the ship. Apparently, treating Neelix's customers for heartburn, thanks to his experimental chili recipe, isn't as glorious as piloting a starship. On the Prometheus, Ricard orders a course change and informs his crew that they're going to rendezvous with the Tal Shiar, who Ricard believes has the vision to apply the might of the Prometheus against the Federation. And he is right, as Mark II informs the Doctor that the Prometheus is the fastest ship in the fleet, and no other ship can catch them at a sustained warp 9.9. The plan now is to release Nurazine gas into the ventilation systems. How? The Doctor will create a diversion on the bridge, while Mark II crawls into Jeffries Tube 17, where the gas can be vented rapidly throughout the ship. However, the Doctor's subterfuge is quickly discovered when pretending to scan the Romulan bridge crew for a fake disease, and trying to use this bluff as a diversion to access the environmental venting lockout. Ricard isn't fooled one bit and takes the Doctor into custody for interrogation. On Voyager, Tom bemoans to Harry that he's tired of treating patients and begs his friend to create a new holographic Doctor. B'Elanna is in Astrometrics, trying to further fine-tune the sensor alignment when Seven appears and berates her for interfering with her work. This being the last straw, B'Elanna lets loose on Seven and tells her exactly how she and the crew feel about Seven's rudeness. But before they can resolve their issues, a transmission breaks through and reveals a heavily armored alien being who declares that they are intruding on Hirogen technology and are unwelcome. Act 4. As Ricard continues to interrogate the Doctor, he believes that a hologram is incapable of this level of infiltration. However, Navala enters with proof of a Starfleet signature transmission entered into the ship's log at the same time the Doctor appeared in sickbay. The Doctor confesses the details of how he came to be on Prometheus, but his captors still don't believe him, and Navala thinks that a hologram extractor will be able to sift out the data they need to reveal the truth. Suddenly, the interrogation room is flooded with gas, knocking out the two Romulans. Mark II appears triumphantly, penning his own story of improvisation and bravery all the while. But they aren't out of the woods yet. They still have to turn the ship around and away from Ricard's rendezvous with the Tal Shiar. Easier said than done. Even though the Doctor has seen his fellow crewmen, especially ace pilot Tom Paris, manipulate a helm control, it doesn't mean the Doctor knows exactly what he's doing. After staring at the controls intently, the Doctor presses a few buttons and voila! The ship comes to a dead stop. But beep, beep, beep. That's not good. Seems that in stopping the engines, the Doctor has started a warp core overload. No problem. A few deft commands on a nearby engineering panel and problem solved. No more warp core breach. Beep, beep, beep. Now what? Well, this next problem isn't the Doctor's fault. 3 Romulan warbirds are on an intercept course with Prometheus. Back on Voyager, Seven and B'Elanna reestablish their link with a Hirogen relay, and Janeway arrives just in time to try and negotiate a peaceful solution with a Hirogen representative on the view screen. However, in order to expedite matters, and since negotiations were interfering with contacting the Doctor, Seven initiates a feedback pulse which literally shocks the Hirogen unconscious. Well, hopefully unconscious. Janeway and B'Elanna are stunned, but B'Elanna is also impressed, giving props to Seven, who politely thanks her in return. In sickbay, things are going just as smoothly as Harry and Tom try to bring their emergency replacement medical hologram online. But as Harry warned Tom, it took a roomful of Starfleet's best and brightest to make the EMH, and their version just doesn't work. Harry has a solution, though. He downloads all of Grey's Anatomy onto a pad, hands it to Tom, and tells his best friend to get reading. And if things on the other side of the galaxy couldn't get any worse, not only are the Romulans in pursuit of the Prometheus, but several other vessels have joined the fray. 2 Defiant-class vessels and an Akira-class starship have arrived and begin firing on the Prometheus. Well, it appears that the previous hijacking of the ship was reported to Starfleet Command, and now all sites, literally and figuratively, are trained on the Prometheus. Act 5. As Prometheus is rocked by both Romulan and Starfleet weapons fire, Mark II desperately tries to hail any of the Starfleet ships, but the Doctor quips that Romulans have scrambled the comm systems. Knowing that they simply need to survive this encounter, the Doctor orders Mark II to engage the tactical systems and begin firing, but not at their own ships, as Mark II hits one of the Starfleet vessels. The Doctor and Mark II are out of options, save one, the old accidental random button pressing on a console maneuver which activates the multi-vector attack mode. The computer requests an attack pattern and target, to which the Doctor declares, "Attack pattern Alpha?" And both holograms yell, "Romulans," to which the 3 separate Prometheus vehicles triangulate their fire and destroy one of the Romulan warbirds, causing the other 2 to bug out. As the smoke clears, 2 armed security officers beam aboard, welcomed by the 2 triumphant medical holograms. Back on Voyager, Seven detects a transmission coming through the Hirogen network. And no, not the aforeshocked Hirogen technician, but a signal from the Alpha Quadrant. It is the Doctor's holographic subroutine stream. B'Elanna informs Janeway that the Doctor has safely returned. And with this news, during his debriefing, the Doctor, in his own loquacious and self-celebratory way, regales his friends about his adventures aboard Prometheus. But after the pomp and circumstance, he informs Janeway, Tuvok, and Chakotay that Starfleet declared Voyager and all hands lost. But thanks to the Doctor's report, they have amended their records and made sure that he relayed to Janeway this very specific message. They said they would contact your families to tell them the news and promised that they won't stop until they found a way to get Voyager back home. and they asked him to relay one more message. They wanted you to know you're no longer alone. The end.
All right, thank you, Norman, for helping us relive the fun and frivolity and also the poignancy at the very end of Message in a Bottle. So let's get right into it. In the teaser, B'Elanna. I think you and I will probably have things to say in the next segment, but really, she literally says to Chakotay, she goes, I'm telling you, Chakotay, if she gets in my way again, I'm not responsible for what happens. Except, B'Elanna, this is me speaking, you are. You are responsible because you're the chief engineer. You're an officer. You're part of the senior staff of this starship of 140 plus other people. So, watch your words.
I didn't mind the scene so much. I just minded, it was that line that didn't sit well for me. But I am glad that someone else in universe said exactly what I said maybe in the last 2 episodes, that Seven is rude. She is curt. She doesn't have a lot of polish, but I know that that's the point. But I'm glad that in universe is acknowledged. Yeah,
very true. Yeah. Short teaser, but I really like the ending of it. It was a nice way to end it with a cliffhanger with this shot of a Federation ship. I thought it was very nice.
So raise your hands if you think it's a good idea that Seven, on her own, just happened to commandeer supposedly, quote unquote, abandoned alien technology without consulting her captain or anyone else first.
I mean, I kind of think that in universe, maybe it just is there. It just shows up on the scan. But it also seems like, oh, no, we found it. And she is just poking around like, oh, what does that do? What additional information can I get now? Instead of saying, hey, there's a big communications array. What should I do?
Right. But it's like the ship is what is the point of why she called them there, not this gigantic alien communications array. Right?
Yeah, I know.
And I know that it hasn't been mentioned yet, but I'm just kind of curious that I guess the Borg never encountered this kind of technology before, because it's literally like that kind of technology is like a moth to a flame to the Borg. It's literally a giant Wi-Fi transmitter in space.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like a mesh network.
Thank you. That's right. The corrosion mesh network. So
yeah. Right. I guess I'll have to rename my at-home mesh network, because for years, I mean, literally ever since I set up my first Wi-Fi, it has always been the Andorian Mining Consortium.
That's good.
Stay tuned a few years, and you'll get that reference. But yeah, maybe I have to change the Hirogen mesh network. Had to get in the number 47 somewhere. Thank goodness Janeway did it, describing their coordinates. And, a bummer of a failed experiment, hearing Janeway's voice bounce back to them. But I really like how just that moment sets up the urgency for the next set of decisions that get made.
Right.
So I thought that played out nice dramatically. Speaking of decisions that were made, I don't think I'd send the only doctor on this mission with such a high risk. I'd maybe do like a quick holodeck recording of, say, Janeway, and then send that. I know that time is tight. But if their only thought is like, let's take our only legit medical officer, and just send him, and we don't know if he's coming back. I think there are plenty of other holodeck characters that you could use.
But John, if they didn't do that, then how would we see like Starfleet's ace pilot whine in the towards the end of the episode?
We'd be bereft of that. That would be tragic.
What is it about? Like, so I just kind of came up with that observation on the fly, reacting to you. But now when you think about it, both he and B'Elanna are the whiniest characters in this episode.
Kind of whiny.
Yeah.
Kind of whiny.
Yeah.
Yep.
What if the doctor was in the middle of a sensitive experiment when B'Elanna deactivated him? It's like, wait, hold on a second. One more drip and this entire vial will explode, taking the ship with it. Nope, I'll just deactivate you.
And she talked to Seven about being rude. Come on.
Right? And then, because these are the things that you like pay attention to. So when the doctor went to astrometrics and then was beamed over to the Prometheus, he was wearing his emitter. And then when he beamed onto Prometheus, he was not. What happened to his emitter?
That is such a good question. I went back and tried to trace that thing, tried to track it in the episode, and I couldn't. And it just because he had to get lucky that on Prometheus there would be hollow emitters.
Right.
Which he makes a point of saying, you have them all over the ship.
Sure.
Well, of course we do. But B'Elanna walks in there with the mobile emitter, and then we never see it again.
Yeah, it's just one of those.
So
you got to be consistent with this kind of stuff because it's kind of important.
You do.
Right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's critical to the episode, yeah. Now, when they decide to send the Doctor, and again, please just back up your data, people. It makes sense. It takes very little time, apparently, to download him, I guess, from the ship's computer to the mobile emitter, and then upload what I presume is a huge amount of information. As opposed to just a voice message of Janeway saying, hey, this is Voyager. But instead they're sending a whole person with the combined intelligence of Starfleet Medical all within him. So, and not to mention all the other experience that he has gained over time.
Right.
That has to be a huge amount of data. And as we close out the act, another great reveal to leave us in a cliffhanger for what is yet to come. I mean, Romulans, because I did not see that coming because we haven't seen Romulans in quite a while.
Right. I will make mention of that later because I think it's a really interesting detail with the tone of this story. The next scene, though, the opening shot of the Prometheus in flight through the screen is just stunning. Oh, my God.
It's cool.
You're going to hear a lot of my gushing over the Prometheus. Except for this one thing. The Prometheus bridge, it's so bright. And it's so it's so carpeted.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, I'll have things to say about that, too. Yeah.
And also, I don't want to be, the pedantic guy, but it's USS Prometheus, the computer says so, and it's the nomenclatures, on the LCARs.
Yeah.
But it's an experimental ship, so shouldn't it have an NX designation?
I thought it did.
Did it?
Did it not?
I always thought it was
NCC?
I always thought it was NX Prometheus, not USS Prometheus.
Oh, no, it is USS Prometheus, but NX and then whatever the numbering is after that, which, by the way, that's a trivia point that I didn't put in there, that on the monitors on board the ship, that has a different registry number than what's on the hull.
See?
Because I guess the people who were doing the CG didn't get the memo.
Obviously I didn't either because I don't really know these. That's why I said I don't want to be pedantic because I'm not that guy. I always thought it was NX something, like NX Defiant or NX Enterprise.
Oh, yeah. No. I think it says USS. Or in the case of Enterprise, we'll figure it out in a couple of years when we get there. But NX-01, just Enterprise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, multi-vector assault mode, I'm sure that we'll have things to say about this. It's very interesting. Now, is it practical? I have to wonder, are you building one ship with 2 drones? Are you building 3 ships? What's the mechanics of that and what is controlling what? Because it seems like at a certain point you tell the computer, just break apart and shoot stuff.
Right.
So who is in control at what point? But a very interesting idea for a ship.
Also known as Voltron mode. But here's the thing, though. So if this were created in Riker's time, would Riker just have the guts like he did in that episode where he just manually docked in Encounter at Farpoint, manually docked the battle bridge to the saucer section? Because now he has to manually dock 2 sections.
2 to 1, yeah. That would be interesting, yeah. And did they destroy that Starfleet ship? That was an Akira class, right, that we saw, the kind of the first one that the Romulans are shooting at.
I don't think that was because the second one was Akira class. The nacelles and the other one were different.
Okay, but we saw an explosion.
We did.
And it just kind of goes out of frame. We don't actually see it destroyed.
I do believe Navala said that the ship was destroyed, and then Ricard. He said that great first test of the Voltron system. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. All right. And look, I know that we've beat this dead horse a million times about what the Doctor can and can't do, but it is interesting that he's on, granted, a new ship that is Starfleet and housed by the computer on that ship, presumably, but still is locked out of so much. It seems like his very presence there would integrate into the comm system or whatever. But yeah, I do understand the idea of protecting parts of the system. I get it. but he shows up and he's just kind of helpless.
Though, I thought it was really neat that it showed how quick on his feet he was when Navala, the Romulan, she comes in with her friend who was injured in the Voltron mode fight.
Yeah,
he says, "You activated me as soon as you walked in," and she's like, "How would she know? Like, she doesn't know." Right?
Yeah.
So
I love that whole scene. I think they're wonderful together. His covering for himself, really good.
I also like seeing the contrast between the Doctor's uniform and Mark II's uniform, because I like seeing that we're dealing with the two separate series that are happening simultaneously, the Dominion War and Deep Space Nine, and then Voyager, of course. But here's the thing that I really, really, really am so happy that they were able to achieve. They were able to achieve the right matching teal hue. HUE, not the Borg hue. Teal hue
right.
on Mark II's turtleneck and the Doctor's upper shoulder chest panels, because usually those things are a little off from uniform to uniform.
A little off, yeah. Very, very true. No, they look great together. And I like Mark II's introduction. I think it's good. And when we get to the little verbal sparring, like him calling Mark I the inferior program, and of course, our EMH saying back to him, disengage your vocal subroutines. Like this sets us up for a lot of fun.
I think you can write pages of like just how great their acting is together, their performances together.
Yeah.
It's really fun to watch, for sure.
Yeah. And a nice little bit of blocking to have the EMH Mark II reappear in a different part of sickbay when our Doctor reactivates him. So he's activated, he deactivates, and you basically just have him physically move in the set, hidden, as you move the camera, so you don't have to do a cut.
Right.
And then he just reappears. Really well done.
I'm wondering, and I haven't really clocked this, but does the EMH always appear or reintegrate or rematerialize in the exact same spot as like their origin point?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No. I think it just kind of shows up where it's convenient for blocking.
Block armor.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, the EMH Mark II says to our EMH, the Romulans haven't gotten involved in our fight with the Dominion. And I thought, somewhere Captain Sisko mutters, hold my baseball.
Yep.
Yeah. We have the line, I'm a doctor, not a commando.
That was good.
Nice.
I like that.
In the long litany of I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank.
Right.
We have a macrovirus shout out.
That's right.
Very nice.
Yeah, from Club Bro Med all the way back to Club Bro Med.
Yes, all the way back
Shout
there.
out.
And a new piece of medical equipment, the thrombic modulator, which is a great Alan Parsons Project tribute band name. So I'm claiming that.
I think it's more like industrial, like industrial funk.
It could be, or it could be like maybe a Rammstein tribute
like
band.
A lot of trash candy
thrombic modulator.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, cool. You got it. Take it. It's yours now.
It's strange to me though that so in the medical profession, scalpels are scalpels, sutures are sutures. There are certain technologies that improve but don't really change. Do you really think the Doctor is going to get thrown off by a piece of technology that he hasn't seen in 1 or 2 years? Maybe 3?
Yeah, I had thoughts about that.
I know. It's just, I know it's played for comedy, but it's just,
yeah, exactly.
I did like the Doctor's and the Mark II's approach to what is and what isn't applicable to the Hippocratic Oath. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I also liked it when the Doctor said, I was doing whatever it was when you were just a gleam in your programmer's eye, meaning Zimmerman programmed the EMH. So does Mark II's programmer look like Andy Dick?
I wondered that, or did they just have somebody else that was a model for that?
Yeah.
And is Dr. Zimmerman on that team?
Right.
You got to wonder because he created the technology. Right. Back on Voyager, kind of nice, kind of interesting to see that they're talking about writing letters to home and to whom and all that stuff. And Janeway writing a letter to somebody called Mark. Mark, you say? We've heard of him before?
Well,
not in a long, long time.
That remark about Mark hit the mark if the mark was Chakotay.
Yeah, I think Chakotay was the mark in that, yes. Yep. Here's an idea for the Voyager crew. If you have heartburn, just use a tricorder because they're everywhere, and then replicate some antacid in your quarters. You don't need to take up room in sickbay for that.
Or energy, for that matter, from replicators. I mean, don't they have like a hyperspray for antacids?
Right.
You know?
You would think.
I don't know.
Yeah. I like the idea that Neelix is planning a life on Earth where, first of all, he's there and he's a cook. And I really appreciate his optimism about the Doctor. Mm-hmm. Like, he's going to succeed. He's going to come back. And it was a nice little moment for him. Cutting back to our two EMHs. You're not my patient. My first bit of good news. Again, the verbal sparring, wonderful in this.
The whole scene about the extra subroutine, quote unquote, innuendo, I thought was brilliant between those two. The way that they acted it.
Yes.
And something that caught me off guard, because I did laugh out loud when Mark II was trying to crawl into the Jeffrey Tube hatchway backwards. Andy Dick's legs, the way that he contorted them, I thought it was brilliant. That's great physical comedy right there.
That was a fun bit, yeah. Interesting to note, they do have chicken salad on Voyager. Now, I wonder if that's a ration, or do they have to replicate like a big, just a whole bunch of it? But they do, Tom recommends a chicken salad. Mm-hmm. I guess safer. Maybe the mayo is shelf-stable. I don't know.
No tribbles. They want to eat your chicken salad.
No, right? Exactly. Now we flip the phrase, I'm a doctor, not a blank, but it's Tom Paris. I'm a pilot, not a doctor.
That was good.
About time he got to say that. And if Harry is an expert in holotechnology, which, really? Okay.
Still an ensign, but an expert in holotechnology.
Yeah, right. Where is the template for the EMH? Like, I mentioned backups before, but is there just like part of it saves? I don't know. I don't want to get stuck on that.
Right.
Because we can't spend too much time there, we have to go back to the cold sniping between Seven of Nine and B'Elanna. Look, B'Elanna was Seven just a few years ago when it comes to her inability to integrate with the crew and her inability to be nice about giving orders. That was you, B'Elanna. That was you.
Apparently in the corridor, B'Elanna was Seven just about, 40 minutes ago. So
just right. Not that long ago at all. I do like the Doctor's logic, very flawless about how the Romulans would deactivate him regardless if he cooperates or doesn't. Yeah, nice little bit there. And I like his comeback that paranoia is a way of life for you, and very aptly sums up the Romulans. And I like the Doctor trying to get under their skin a little bit. And I thought it was a fun bit that the EMH Mark II also has this like overindulgent, self-aggrandizing bit of telling stories. But our EMH should absolutely be used to that. I mean, he cuts them off.
Yeah.
But that just sounds like part of the programming. Like you do that anyway.
I wonder if it's kind of like the programmers adding a little bit of code to make sure that somewhere along the line someone gets credit for what they did. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Here's an interesting thing, though. So when Mark II, slings, the Navala, the Romulan, off the table because she's unconscious, you can actually watch the actor decelerate her fall as she's slumping to the floor before she hits the back wall. Yeah. And if you were knocked out with that gas, she wouldn't be able to do that. You can actually see her break her fall into 2 or 3 different places before she settles on the ground.
Right. Yeah, they should have blocked that where that part of the floor was hidden.
Right. You don't see
so you wouldn't
her,
see that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, that said, I love the total disregard for the organic life forms on board. And they're just throwing them around there and on the bridge, and that's fine. And a nice little effect of those two, of both EMHs transporting themselves, not with the transporter, but changing the holo emitter location in mid-conversation.
Right.
That was a fun little bit. And all right, now I know we're going to talk more about Prometheus, but I'm just identifying some problems here in addition to the carpet and bright lighting. Apparently, you can just start a warp core overload by pressing a few buttons. You just boom, boom, boom. There's not a warning saying, do you really want to overload the warp core? It just happens. And then the telemetry, the feedback is terrible because it's just beeps without a readout. I mean, at least the computer on Voyager has the good sense to tell you, warp core breach is imminent, or tell you to do a thing,
Experimental starships, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So just beats.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Apparently, negotiating with Hirogen, going nowhere. I applaud Seven's creative thinking.
See, I thought that was really weird because so you have Well, first of all, you're talking to this alien that you've never seen before, and you're hijacking their tech, right? And then you have this armored face with a very intimidating voice. Now, it could be like a Baylock situation, we don't really know, or it could be like a Wizard of Oz situation, we don't really know. But
it could be an alcoholic baby behind all of that. You don't know.
You know, and hopefully there's Tranya at the end of this, but you think maybe caution might win the day here, You
would, although maybe giving Seven the benefit of the doubt, that's the kind of thing that would look like a natural problem to have. So it doesn't look like, oh, okay, I just got shocked by the people on the other end. It's like, oh no, my technology is failing. But
it's a fair way of explaining it away. But I'm just like, I hope that guy doesn't wake up on the other end and say like, we're at war. So
I think he's going.
You know what I mean? So raise your hand if you thought it was a good idea that Seven attacked the Hirogen technician, who she shocked unconscious while Jaina was trying to make first contact.
I have to say the scene of Harry's EMH is just a lot of Bob Picardo standing perfectly still and not blinking, and that must have been a serious pain to shoot. It was a fun little bit, and honestly, it seems to me, though, like just going to the holodeck and saying, computer, create a fully staffed sickbay, that would be a good place to start.
Yep.
You could just do that, but I don't want to, sorry, I'm second-guessing everything. EMH2's declaration, we're doomed. A little bit of Dr. Smith vibes there, so that was fun.
Right.
Nice to see some Starfleet show up, like a couple of Defiant-class ships. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that, so the Defiant at one point in time was a special ship. It's a one-of-a-kind.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't, and then you had Red Squad have their own, and now you have two more here, so... Are they just like
Red Squad?
Red Squad. Yeah, I know.
They're the worst.
But are they just now being mass produced? I guess.
Well, look, we don't know the exact timing here, and I know that. Look, yes, we do know the exact timing that it exists. But as far as when Defiant was created versus Valiant versus what other prototypes were in the works,
the Sao Paulo afterwards.
Yeah. So it is conceivable. We don't see the names on those. True. But, I mean, Defiant is special because it's Defiant. And once they figure out that design works, okay, we're just going to keep making more.
Just like Ferrari. So in the midst of this battle scene, the bright white and beige and carpeted bridge of the Prometheus, don't you think it's just a little too bright for a dramatic scene? You and I both are going to fixate on this. I know it.
And it just feels like, look, Wrath of Khan got it right, where you dim the lights, you turn on the red lights. And I know that's hard to shoot, but it just seems like you need to do that.
But even Voyager, like Star Trek series brightest bridge, illuminated brightest bridge so far, and the Next Generation, that was very bright. Yeah. Those pale, pardon the pun, pale in comparison to how bright, like, the Prometheus is, and it's a warship, right? So it's a little weird. So.
Yeah. And as we wrap it up, very, very short Act 5, lots of starships shooting at each other. And that's not a thing we really get on Voyager because, of course, they're not around other Starfleet starships, certainly not Romulans. So that was kind of fun to work that into Voyager. I do have to say that what's happening, though, the two doctors, the two EMHs problems with Prometheus, speaks to the need for greater automation on a lot of the end of Prometheus, just waiting there for commands. But then it seems like it's a little too automated. Maybe we can get into that. Just like, what do you want me to shoot? Oh, just shoot those things. Oh, okay, cool. Then it just goes.
AI, you know what I mean? Right?
Right. Yeah, they're predicting the problems with AI, but a really nice sentimental ending. And I like how they took this fun episode and then put a little sentimental bow on it at the end for all of us.
I can't help but notice that the EMH Mark I has to tell the Mark II, "Don't stand so close to me."
We'll get right back to Message in a Bottle after a word from this week's sponsors.
So, John, here we are. It's a brand new year. Do you make New Year's lists as most people do?
Kind of. Maybe not formally. Maybe even not putting down a formal list, but thinking in my head like, ooh, now is the right time to change a habit or do something constructive and positive for myself.
I mean, some things that people do, I know I do, is we take stock of what we did in the previous year and kind of apply it to how we're going to make changes in the new year. There are certain things you want to keep the same about yourself, and there are certain things you want to change in the new year. It's a blank slate. We can do whatever we want. There's a lot of promise. There are things that you're really good at crushing. You can crush organization. You can crush diet. Sometimes you need a little bit more help. You need something that makes something new for you. And around New Year's and a little bit past New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves. And instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right, what you're doing right is what you're doing right. There's not much more you can do about that. Maybe you finally organized one side of your house or your apartment. Have you done any of that, John?
Well, baby steps. But I like where you're going with this because it's saying instead of like, oh, I need to change my life 180 degrees, it's like, well, wait, let's look at the things that we're already doing well and let's grow from there. Let's just build on that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So there are the things that you do. There are the things that are routine. There are the things that make you better, but there are things that you can improve on and you can find better strengths to build on and you can do so in non-extreme ways. You don't have to do everything all at once at the same time. You can make small changes. You don't have to make extreme resolutions and make changes that actually stick.
And this is where therapy comes in. And I am a big advocate of therapy. I didn't start formally until a few years ago, but I will say that therapy has been there for me to get through some very difficult times in life, but it's also there as sort of a way to mentally reset and take stock and also sort of appreciate and celebrate the things that you are doing well. So it's not just there for the difficult times. Therapy can also be there to provide that support for your mental health in the best of times. So I'm a big advocate for that. And whether or not you, dear listener, have been in therapy yourself, there are benefits like how about learning positive coping skills or how to set boundaries and empowering you to be the best version of yourself. So like I said, it isn't just for trauma or things that have upset and turned your life upside down. It can also be there to benefit you in very good times. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, I want to recommend that you give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It is designed from the ground up to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. Now, all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/missionlog today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/missionlog.
Norman, it's so coincidental that we were just talking about New Year's resolutions. Well, I'm going to tell you about another company that can help you get started on your resolutions, and that is Factor. So you are ready for the new year. Now, Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Here's what I love to do. Skip the grocery store, skip the prep work, and skip the cooking fatigue. Instead, here's what you do. You get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. By the way, Norm, before you tell us a little bit more of those add-ons, I love that because when I order, I'll do food and then I'll get some smoothies. Keep those in the fridge.
Those smoothies are amazing.
Oh, they're so good, right?
Yeah.
They're awesome. Yeah, so that's always my go-to, throw in some of those.
Yeah, so you want to take the stress out of your life. Forget frantic lunch preps and rushed dinners because you don't know what to make or you're scrambling to get stuff out of the fridge. Factor's 2-minute meals are your secret weapon in this new year. So fuel up with fast and restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juice, snacks. Breakfast smoothies or breakfast and smoothies? Sorry, Earl.
Breakfast and smoothies,
okay.
Yeah.
Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks. We love snacks, and more to keep us going no matter what's on the schedule. So skip that overpriced takeout trap. It's convenient, sure, but it is expensive and it is a trap. Factor is cheaper. It's way more delicious. Take our word for it than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. You got to love that convenience. They're ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, which means more time for you because cooking takes enough time out of your day.
Exactly. And look, and it goes further than that, too. Let's say you need a special occasion meal. Okay, Gourmet Plus is the perfect solution if you're looking for that, fast upscale options done easily. And when things get hectic, Factor is flexible. You change up your order every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or pause and reschedule your deliveries anytime. So stress less over meal times in the new year. Factor's no prep, no mess meals, free up time otherwise spent shopping, cooking, and cleaning. No more wasting time in the kitchen.
Yeah, not only does Factor offer fast and simple solutions when we're too busy to cook, but they also help us stay on track of our goals, right? Because we're in the new year. We have certain goals. So with offerings like Protein Plus and Keto, you, John, we can stay on track. This is definitely going to come in handy for New Year's goals. Factor has everything we need for a week of flavorful, nutritious eats. And in addition to ready-to-eat meals, they have cold-pressed juices, smoothies. Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, they're so good. I'm thinking about those right now. Yeah,
energy bites, extra protein, veggie sides, and more to keep all of us energized during these stressful times, and especially during the in-between meal times.
Yeah, so head over to factormeals.com/missionlog50 and use our code missionlog50, that's 50, to get 50% off. That's the code missionlog50 at factormeals.com/missionlog50 to get 50% off. Norman, we may approach this episode. And,
that was very Shatner of you, by the way, right there.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We may approach this episode and look at the comedy, the verbal sparring. All of that is a lot of fun. And what we do, though, is a little bit different. We need to look at morals, meanings, messages, and see if in our discussion here, if that lands us at a point in the next segment. And I'm trying to think, what are the areas that deserve deeper attention? It's kind of played off just as a bit of business. I'll get to business in a moment. Just a bit of fun where we encounter B'Elanna, and she still has this chip on her shoulder. And again, if anyone on board should know about taking time to acclimate to the crew and adjusting your style to match others, then it's definitely her.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, is it just prejudice about a Borg? I mean, because Seven even says that in kind of a funny way, like, yeah, the crew's worried about me assimilating them.
Yeah.
But honestly, in this very short time, Seven has shown growth, but it's not like B'Elanna has reached out to her as a friend, just as an officer who corrects or criticizes her all the time. And I wonder, is there more to this than just B'Elanna having problems with Seven personally? Is a little bit of anti-Borg prejudice? What is it that's going on? Is it B'Elanna seeing too much of herself in Seven's rather cold approach to things?
I mean, this is like the first time it was like really like verbalized in such a way. That's why I made mention of that in observations, where I'm like, thank you that they actually acknowledge that more kind of like more in a pointed way than any other time so far since Seven's been in the crew. You know, I mean, she's had her run-ins with like Harry, and that's been awkward. I mean, Tom gave her like some really good leadership advice, and you know, he even said that, you know, you're new, but, you know, you'll acclimate. And if you need any help, I'll support you. And that was like, you know, a few episodes ago. But for someone like B'Elanna, we have seen her in this incredible arc of being, very rough around the edges, like Seven, you know, very caustic, you know, very combative, you know, very hard to get along with, except for Chakotay. And I love that Chakotay pushes back and says, you know what, I'm tired of this. You're an officer now.
Yeah.
You've been here for 4 years as an officer. Grow up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
right.
You know, there's a criticism, you know, that we levy against characters, but sometimes you have to levy it against the writer for those characters. And I actually put that criticism on the writers because, like, that's I don't think that's a line that sits well with B'Elanna, the whole, I'm not responsible for what happens next. Of course you are. Like, if all of a sudden you attack Seven, is she being attacked by just what? An idea? A wish? No, she's being attacked by you, like you did with Carrie in the very second episode of this series.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
What is she going to say to Chakotay? If Carrie does something, I'm not going to be responsible for my fist going through his nose. Of course not. Right? So I felt that was a little out of line for B'Elanna. I think that sure, the Borg prejudice is there. But then again, aren't we Starfleet? Aren't we supposed to be bigger and better and brighter and past all this?
That's the whole point. It really is. And even in maybe especially in a Starfleet structure, there is this perhaps fine line between, you know, being a commander, being a commanding officer, having people that are your subordinates who need to follow orders, versus being a friend or being friendly at least, because it seems that all the way back, you know, from TOS forward, there is this sense of camaraderie where people aren't just numbers, they aren't just functions filling a role. We're led to believe that, at least within the Starfleet structure, like, people are allowed to excel because they are encouraged, because they're given the room to grow, and they are given the support by their senior officers. And especially with somebody like Seven, who I think, you know, see also my criticism of how we've handled Seven with Harry. Seven is somebody who is very new, but also could potentially be very fragile in this whole thing. She has presented herself partly as a danger to the ship if we don't really understand what's going on with her. Janeway, at the very least, has made the effort to understand and give Seven the benefit of the doubt most of the time. That needs to also be expressed by the other people on her crew, especially senior staff like B'Elanna.
Yeah, and it's like it's a management type thing. You know, you can't just you can't harbor all of these criticisms and emotions and reactions and just unleash it all at once. That is counterproductive to helping somebody develop and grow and learn. How is Seven supposed to do that if no one's actually taking the time? I'm not going to be hypocritical about that. Harry has tried. And again, it's not for the lack of Harry trying to actually help her and advise her and give her leadership and teach her certain things. I blame that on bad writing. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it because I have to say it. Right? Because the opportunity is there for her to be able to grow, except that you're putting characters in front of her that you're not committing to their growth as well as hers. Right? And I think that's problematic. Like, turn your actual leadership roles into leadership roles so that the person who needs to benefit from that advice can, instead of turning it into an inside joke.
See, here's what's interesting. We spent a whole episode back in season 1, maybe, where Tuvok had to learn with his trainees how to be an effective commanding officer. Right. Although it was a little strange because, you know, Tuvok is much older than he appears, and he has had a lot more experience than maybe you would think at first blush. But he had to learn these command skills, these personal skills, on top of just being an effective job function. So we spent a whole episode doing that. And of course, we had a lot of time for B'Elanna to grow and become more confident and more competent in her role than just somebody who had this, again, this Maquis chip on her shoulder, and she's just going to come in and tell everybody what to do. What we're missing maybe in this episode is that, you have a moment where B'Elanna comes to respect Seven, but it's only because of Seven's actions. It's not because of any effort on B'Elanna's part to actually reach Seven on a personal level.
A questionable action at that.
A questionable action, sure. Yeah. It's like, oh, you did something tough. Okay, well, yeah, but she probably would have done that anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe there's not an intended parallel here. Maybe there is, but it's interesting to me how bedside manner is a running gag in this show between the two EMHs, and then you have Harry's failed holocharacter, and that became kind of a conversation with him and Tom. And it's prefaced, all of that is prefaced by this bit with Seven, or with B'Elanna saying, well, she's rude. Well, okay, maybe, but what does that actually mean? And what are you doing to reach out to her? But we've already walked through all of that with the EMH and seen him grow, and now we get to go through it with another one.
There is an old axiom or adage or saying, is it better to ask for forgiveness than permission? And going back to like what you were saying, B'Elanna does have a point. She's talking about Seven to Chakotay. She says she may look human and she may sound human, but she's all Borg. Now, there's a certain type of, bigotry towards that. But there's also an expectation of, well, what do you expect is going to happen, right? She's Borg.
Yeah,
she's not human. Right. She hasn't polished in, with human mannerisms and pleasantries, and just certain, just pleases and thank yous, right? At the same time, though, we have gone through several weeks of episodes, and they may equate into several months of Seven being on the ship. The big question is when will Seven learn to work within the system, right? Because, of course, I applaud initiative, and I applaud her initiative with seeing the potential of this Hirogen antenna array, but she didn't consult anyone on the ship before she engaged the technology.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
There is a hierarchy of command on the ship, and Janeway has expressly said that when Seven barged into her ready room and said, like, you're taking too much time, you're exploring, you're putting yourself at risk. This was at the end of Random Thoughts. And Janeway says, well, this is my ship. I will deem what is necessary for my ship. So if Seven understood that, as she admitted to at the end of that episode, then why doesn't she take these findings to the captain before she moves forward with making these decisions of using an unknown alien technology in order to do what is definitely a promising endeavor, for sure. I am not criticizing that. But there is a hierarchy and a structure to follow.
Right. Speaking of character changes, character growth, I think I don't know if it's necessarily character growth, or maybe it's just that the context is different. But let's look at our Doctor, our EMH Mark I, for a moment in this episode. So the way he explains himself to the EMH Mark II, the way he goes through the challenges of the Delta Quadrant, I thought it was really well done. It was very interesting because it's less about self-aggrandizement and more about his actual growth. Now, it's a little bit different. That's why I say maybe it's just the context playing out here, because on Voyager, our EMH is, well, he's just like EMH Mark II in the respect that he would stop and go through the litany of all of his incredible accomplishments and make sure that he's bent every ear in his direction. But when he's with this other EMH, A, it's a one-on-one situation. B, it is a fellow hologram. So maybe that's the difference. And C, maybe it's just that he sees this EMH Mark II as the younger neophyte that he needs to help nurture.
Less follically challenged.
Less follically challenged, yeah. But it changes the Doctor's outlook a little bit. And it's nice to see. And you kind of wonder, like, oh, is this what he's like now? Will he be like this when he comes back to Voyager? Was it just that he was challenged by the situation and that was the way he responded to that particular situation? Now, you mentioned in the last situation, I do have to say that Voyager's only been gone for 4 years, and not even like 3.5 years. That much medical advancement in only that amount of time, that would be a lot.
In regards to the technology that the Doctor didn't understand yet. No, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the thrombic modulator or
thrombic. That's such a good
great word. Good word choice there. Nobody in Starfleet Medical could keep up if even the EMH can't figure out what new equipment is what, because he should just be able to size it up instantly,
right.
you know. So that was maybe a bit of a stretch. But here's what I like. I like the Doctor explaining to Mark II, I socialize with the crew, fraternize with aliens. I've even had sexual relations, which leads us to an addition to my program, as he described it.
Yeah.
So at this point, Voyager has some, well, let's not call them sex jokes, but kind of an interesting wink to the audience about what has happened and what our EMH has been through versus what the other EMH has not experienced yet. And seriously, this became the question in my mind. What does an EMH need with sexual desire? And is it just because that is an inherent part of human existence that it then works its way into programming an EMH? Because, of course, they are based on whomever was the human model for that holodeck character. But these are moments that are so short, and they're just played with a couple of lines and a couple of interesting reactions that we get from EMH2. But look at EMH2's fascination and envy, and there's this like wistfulness that he has. Like, well, if it can happen to EMH1, it can happen to me.
Right.
But this has to be a feeling. It's almost like when we were picking apart Data's feelings a long, long time ago. Like, does Data just inherently have those feelings? Are they an emergent property? Or was this something that was specifically programmed into him in order to have a fully human experience? Because the EMH doesn't necessarily need to have a human experience. He just needs to be good at being a doctor. But I found it so fascinating when it got to the idea of sex that this would be something that would literally stop him in his tracks.
But bedside manner, like Harry said, is an important part about being a doctor. And I think that perhaps somewhere in the subroutines or the algorithms of the program, these programmers like Zimmerman or whoever programmed Mark II needs to basically create some type of adaptive learning program where the doctor understands empathy from across different levels, like from a sensual level, like from like an envious level, like what makes or drives the human condition to do what it does. And I do think that it's really interesting that the Doctor has grown so much over the 4 years because he's in such a concentrated environment of all of these different people that have all of these different raging emotions that are happening in their exile in the Delta Quadrant. You know, he deals with, you know, a very kind of testosterone forward Tom Paris and Chakotay, right? You know, someone who is like who's longing to get back to her relationship with Mark, with Janeway. You know, Neelix and Kes, you know, who are very much in love with each other, and you know, like the Doctor is trying to understand and deconstruct why this is important to connect with these people. And through that, he's learning how to be a better physician because he can now emotionally connect with his patients rather than just say, what's the nature of the medical emergency?
Well, and that's our EMH1, though, that is on all the time and has far outgrown his programming. I guess what I'm trying to piece together here is EMH2, who is so new and presumably has only been activated a handful of times. You know, brand new ship, brand new program. really this is the field test. But there is something in EMH2's programming that makes him hear that EMH1 has had sexual relations, and this is something that he has experienced that makes EMH2 really go, wow, wait, you can and you have, and more importantly, I want that too. That is the implication,
If I can take it from like a racial and cultural standpoint, there have been times, and I have had the fortune of being able to enjoy certain things. And when, say, other people of my culture, other Filipinos of my culture see me, like, and they're in like service industries on like either cruise ships or like tending bar or, waiting in restaurants, and they see me enjoying this lifestyle, they kind of ask me like, how did you do it? And I'm like, this is how I achieved my goals. And there's a spark that you see in their eyes. They're like, well, if you can do it, I can do it too. I'm like, I didn't come from anywhere special. Yeah. I just worked hard, achieved, set goals, and fulfilled my dreams. You can do that too. And I think that's what the Doctor was trying to inspire, at least by example, if not by purpose, that he was showing the Mark II, like, look, if provided the right environment, you can achieve what I've achieved for yourself and for your own experiences. So I think that's really neat. It was like where I think that B'Elanna failed Seven in that regard, I think the Doctor succeeded with Mark II in saying, you don't have to be exactly like me, but if you pursue these goals, you can achieve your own independence and your own experience and more robustness for your own existence.
Good point.
Holo emitters everywhere and there's not an emergency holographic bridge crew? Seriously?
Well, it's a good thing that we turned off like the experimental host program, because I'm not exactly sure what that persona would have said about this episode, but
that guy was insufferable. He needed to go away.
I can't wait. You're not the program. You're the real John, right?
Wait, what? Am I?
Oh gosh, is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? We already did that bit. Yeah,
we did.
So we're at the end of our coverage here of Message in a Bottle, and as we do with all of our Mission Log episodes, we first take a look at, does this episode hold up? Does this episode withstand the test of time? And then we finish our conclusion with morals, meanings, and messages, if we have found any contained therein in this episode. So, holographic program John, if that is you, how did you feel about this episode? What did you come away with?
I'll be, let's see, HPH, holographic program, holographic podcast host 1. I'll be Mark 1. Yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That is a lot. It's too much to fit on a T-shirt. I will say that I've got some mixed feelings about this episode. And I remember looking at this one very fondly, kind of retrospectively, but here we've arrived at this episode Mission Log, try to look at it with a fresh perspective, watch it a few times to let it all sink in. It is very entertaining on one level, but I also don't necessarily think that entertainment value has a lot of playback value for replay value for me. So once I see Andy Dick and the interplay between EMH1 and EMH2, I'm kind of good with it, and I don't need to see it again right away. You know what I'm saying? So regardless of what one may think of Andy Dick, I just think it's a character that is best served here as the one-off that it is. And I wonder if they had considered at the time a different personality type for a new EMH. I mean, look, obviously Andy Dick brings a bit of Dr. Smith to his performance, which is fun, and he's doing a bit of Andy Dick shtick as he's doing it. But you have EMH1 and EMH2, and they're both a little prickly, and they're both, self-aggrandizing and all of this stuff. But I wonder if they played with the idea of making him very different in order to play against
Do you
Bob.
think it would have been too much if they brought in Sid? Because Sid was the original pattern for the first holographic Doctor back in Deep Space Nine. And this is before this timeline.
Boy, that would have been really cool. That would have been really interesting. And I wonder if our EMH then would have learned something from him. But, what's interesting is, once you create the character, it's like the Kirk-Spock dynamic. Spock was played differently when he was paired up with Pike in the cage. And then he became a different character up against the more emotional and dynamic performance that Shatner gave as Kirk. So here I think Bob Picardo has to attenuate his performance a bit to fit what Andy Dick is giving as EMH2, or as EMH, EMH2. Yeah, so that was a sort of a thing that I think was fun, but again, I don't know how much replay value that really has. Then, another thing that I love about this episode, I love that it is directly relevant to the central mission of Voyager, which is to get back home. And it's nice to see Seven involved in that effort and the urgency given to it at the top of the show, given that we last encountered a good Romulan back in Eye of the Needle. It's fun here to go back to the opposite side of the Romulans and see that with some real intrigue in the Alpha Quadrant. So that's a nice way to tie those stories together with Dominion War. All of that, very, very cool. Okay, but that said, what I also don't really like in this episode is that it feels like we are padding a lot of these scenes with a lot of business. There's business between the two EMHs. There's business with Tom in sickbay. There's business with things going wrong on the Prometheus. It's just a lot of business. And maybe what I needed was a couple of more scenes of poignancy. But we really do get that lovely moment at the end of the episode. So I'm lukewarm on this. I honestly, I really do enjoy it. I think it is both a fun diversion and a reminder of the central mission of the show. But I can't say that I'll leap to this episode again very soon in a rewatch. And very much to your point earlier on, Norman, Prometheus is very cool, but I feel like that interior is already so dated compared to Voyager's bridge, which I think still really holds up. So, this is a little bit of a problem with the design scheme there. But what are you going to do? All right, so how about you, man?
Okay, so you may have noticed, dear listeners, that I have a huge bias, not in this episode, but towards the design of the Prometheus. I think it is literally one of the most gorgeous ship designs ever to grace Star Trek of any series. And special thanks and special credit to Rick Sternbach, who designed the Prometheus. I do believe in reading the Eagle Moss magazine that comes in with the ships that this design was an extrapolation of an unused Voyager design proposal created by Rick Sternbach, especially the very distinctive and sharper spear-shaped tip outer main hull compared to Voyager's softer, curvier main hull. So I'm glad that I really love the aggressiveness, the way the ship looks.
It's cool. It's very cool.
I remember the first time I watched this years ago, and I texted Char and I said, wow, this is like this multi-vector attack mode. I've never seen this before in Star Trek. This is so neat. And it's because I love all things Voltron, as I mentioned earlier in observations. As for the episode, I do believe that the success of this episode really hinges on Bob Picardo and Andy Dick, who were essentially this holographic pairing of these great comedy legends like Abbott and Costello, or, if you're Muppets fans, Statler and Waldorf, right? Or Martin and Lewis.
Yeah.
They just had this wonderful, dynamic, complementary, yet acerbic quality. They played marvelly against each other. And I really do think that it really showcased not just Picardo's talents, but how far the Doctor actually has evolved through the course of his story arc, and how we see that reflected in the eyes of this new experimental prototype, this EMH2, who is just starting his life and starting his career and starting his experience and his evolution. So I thought that was really well played. I thought that the two played off each other really well. What great scene partners that they are. And I really think that it was smart that they, again, you've mentioned this before, for whatever, personal opinions you have of Andy Dick as the performer, as the character of the Mark II, I think that he was perfectly cast just to show the difference of the physicality between these two and how different they are. Because the scene where Mark II tried to step backwards into that Jeffries tube, I was crying. I thought that was so funny. I thought that Andy Dick played that perfectly. And you know what? If that's one of the more complimentary things I can say about this episode, then so be it. Yeah. I also thought that was interesting that in the 2 times that we saw Voyager's lifeline of hope, in the form of a compressed data stream tossed towards the Alpha Quadrant, that lifeline, both times, in Eye of the Needle and in this episode, were snagged by Romulans. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I thought that was a nice way to bookend Season 1's Eye of the Needle. Although, I have to say that Von Armstrong's performance as the main Romulan in that episode was
so
far superior to Judson Scott's performance in this episode. Judson Scott...
You're saying his superior.
His... Oh, John. Now I know you're the hologram. I know you're the hologram. The real John Champion, I don't know where he is. But
would have never gone for such low-hanging fruit.
That was beautiful. That was perfect. And I thought the episode was fun. I thought it was visually glorious. I thought that the performances were great. I think it does hold up well because it has the right mixture of story and characterization, and I think that they're very well paced and balanced well. Now, I agree that will I go and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to rewatch this like anytime soon? Probably not, except for the Prometheus. I can't get enough of that shit. I can't get enough of that shit. Ben Robinson sent all the products my way. Yeah.
Right. So we both agree that it is fun, but we always have to ask, is there a moral? Is there a meaning? Is there a message? And I keep coming back to the same word. Like, the fun thing about the episode is that it's fun. And I'd argue that, we change our characters a little here in order to serve the drama, but that's okay. What we're serving, though, it's a bit of a romp where we challenge the characters in some new-ish ways. The Doctor into becoming this, strategic commander, and B'Elanna into being an officer who has a little more maturity, I hope. Seven into being nice, although I don't know that we necessarily get that. She just sort of succeeds. And then Tom, Tom takes up a challenge of medicine for real, potentially, maybe, and Harry into learning some heavier programming. So that's all fine. Like, everybody gets to stretch a little bit. Now, the question is, will these things stick? Maybe not. I think in the end, we get to see them navigate ways to stretch beyond their comfort zones and maybe, just maybe, be a better version of themselves the next time around. I hope. I guess we'll see next week in the next encounter between B'Elanna and Seven. That's really what I'm waiting for, is like, can the maturity stick? So we'll see. How about you, Norman? Any lessons?
In this corner, we have the Borg Basher, and in this corner, we have the Klingon Crusher. Right? So,
yeah, there you go. That's it.
Funny thing is that I think the only real issue I have with this episode is that I didn't really see a moral meaning or message really kind of crystallize for me in this episode.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it doesn't always have to be that way. I mean, like, obviously that is our purview as Mission Log, to find these things. But not every episode is going to have them, or at least as obvious as some other episodes. I think perhaps the lessons that both Seven and B'Elanna learned in this episode, they're noteworthy in some respect, right? I appreciate that B'Elanna was able to express her frustration, like with Seven's rudeness. And not in the way where she said, like, I'm not going to be responsible for my actions, come what may. I mean, I thought that line to me still, I thought was ill-written, and it didn't do anything for B'Elanna's character, who has evolved so much over the last 4 years. I thought that was uncharacteristic of her to say at this time, in her evolution. I don't think that she was unprofessional the way that she expressed herself to Seven, and I think that Seven needed to have that kind of directness in order to understand why exactly the crew was so, they're so standoffish and cold to her, because you are this rude, you're kind of like, you're irascible, you're irritating, you're standoffish. And I think that Seven doesn't understand why until people explain to her why, right? I mean, how would she? Like, the Borg don't have emotions. They don't interact. They don't have feelings. They don't have protocol. They don't have boundaries. So until you understand what those are, what those actually mean, she's never going to understand them. So someone actually has to say that. And it's very hard to do. I mean, I know that B'Elanna is not 100% human, but for human beings, confrontation is very difficult. Right? Especially from a managerial standpoint. Yeah. Believe me, I had to do, like in a previous job, I had to manage 5. And everyone has personalities. Yeah. Everyone has emotions. Mm-hmm. Everyone has reactions. Mm-hmm. Everyone has very interesting nuances to the way that your management style is. So I understand that. And I think that was actually well done. But Jerry, as always, brings her A game to the episode. The nuances that she has, the glances that she has, the facial tics that she has, the way that she behaves, the way that she reacts. I am so glad. I'm going to put this on the record. I am so glad that she is not just eye candy. I am so glad that she is so good in her craft as an actor. Because if she weren't, we'd be having different conversations about 7 of 9. Right? But I guess maybe the other message could be, don't shock the unknown alien who has now been alerted to your presence and may have taken 7's active aggression as an act of aggression. Let's see how that plays out.
Those are words to live by, a lesson to be absorbed, truly. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Hunters.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shadwell, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi. Now that he's overheard the message in a bottle, let's hope the Herogen isn't sending out an SOS, sending out an SOS, sending out an SOS, sending out an SOS, sending out an SOS. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.